3, 2, 1, and we're on.
We are on, and we're back in guest city. We had a couple of, what did we do? We had a Zoom one. We had a one where we couldn't do the scene switcher, which might be a problem tonight. So we had just the cameras side by side, and now we're back in guest city, which is kind of home for us now. We didn't know we were going to be a guest podcast. At the beginning, we thought we were just going to talk shit forever.
But I think we just ran out of ideas.
Well, that's one of them. You don't tell them that.
Nah, we got a massive list of ideas.
They were too big, too good to just have us. We're going to bring in another person or multiple people in. So we're fucking idiots.
Episode number 70.
Episode number 70, and we have the very amazing and beautiful Abbie. Thank you so much for joining us.
For coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Now, another classic one of J-Man's great friends coming on as a guest. Like, we don't really step too much outside of J-Man's friendship group other than like 2 times, which is great. It means I've got some cool fucking friends, right?
That's true.
So we have known each other, which I was thinking about this and talking about it with Erica earlier today. We have known each other for 12 years this year.
Damn.
It was about 2010, I reckon, when we met through a mutual friend. Now, the mutual friend was your only ever boyfriend because you are a proud lesbian woman.
That's right.
And you are the person who introduced me to gay bars for the first time.
Yes, proudly.
So it was one of those things as well, like, it was so much fun going into the old Mars bar. It's not even a thing anymore, is it?
No,
Mars is not a thing
it's
anymore.
not a thing.
Rest in peace.
I know.
What is it now?
It's now
a gym. There's a gym there now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really random.
So the old Apple bar is now what's called Mary's Poppins.
Yeah.
What a fucking cool. What a cool game.
Yeah.
Have you been there?
Yeah.
Is that cool in there?
No.
It's a cool club, but
it's a really cool venue.
Yeah.
But it's
But yeah, so obviously the person, subject one, who we talked about, who was your only boyfriend. So that is in like what year were you in?
Year 8. It was first high school.
Oh, it was year 8, right.
Yeah, first high school boyfriend.
So how long after that were you like out? Like
properly out?
Yeah, properly out.
When I was like 15.
Wow.
So like,
so
like
not too long
2
after.
years later?
Yeah, and so considering we're old as shit, like that was pretty...
Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, but that was a big thing, I guess, in terms of...
different back then than what...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It was huge. Like, coming out in high school was not a thing then.
Yeah. That's right.
Absolutely not a thing.
Everyone, and I guess I have a lot of mates or people, or like acquaintances that, you know how you could usually tell if someone was. And like, I remember that time, there was a lot of people that would just, you know, because of the culture and the mentality, and everyone was just, you know, very different, very backwards way of looking at it, and the way they treated people for it, that were just so in, like, whether they were in denial or just couldn't possibly think of being honest about it. That must have been hard for you to make that decision at that time.
Yeah, it was not great.
Talk us through, I guess, your kind of thinking at that time, and I guess the benefits of it from you, but also how did you manage from a mental health stuff? How did the family go? Like, how did that?
I think in a lot of ways I was lucky, but like reflecting on it, I was lucky. But at the time, I didn't feel that way.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah, like it felt huge, and I think I kind of always knew that I was attracted to girls, and I like was different, and then like in high school, you know, got a boyfriend because everyone. That's what you're meant to do. And we were like the first year 8 like couples. That was like a big thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Year 8.
I know. So cute.
I had a girlfriend for 1 weekend in year 8.
Oh, really?
Like,
I
asked her out. I think I've said it on comedy all the time. I don't think I've said it on the podcast, but I asked her out on the Friday. And then we like used some minutes on each other over the weekend. And then I got there on Monday and she's like, this isn't working. I'm like, how can you have made a decision?
Hey, that quickly.
Come on. Wasted your minutes on her.
What creepy shit did I must have said in those like conversations? I probably was just like, I love you, let's get married. And she's like,
probably.
Yeah,
well.
Because that's me. That's me to a T.
It's true.
That's me to a T. Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off
okay.
there. But yeah, so you're the first couple in year 8.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah, and then like, and I went to Salisbury High, as you know, which was fucking terrible piece of shit school, and everyone there was awful. And
did you only go there?
No, I left. So I left, and I think again in reflection, in part because like I didn't feel comfortable to be out there. I remember there was like one girl at school who wasn't even out, but like was very obviously gay, and like people just bullied her and were like, "You fucking dyke" and shit like that.
Ah, true.
Yeah, and it was awful, and she ended up leaving. She ended up like going to jail and stuff. Like I think honestly because of the bullying, like she was bullied so much. And I remember like after dating old mate, and he got another girlfriend and he was with her for ages, and her like all of her friends really like not anything to do with being gay, like they thought that I was still interested in him, and they like gave me heaps of shit, and they like I wasn't at school for ages because I was sick, and then they told everyone that I was pregnant and like all of this shit, like
Yeah, so you're starting rumors and shit.
yeah, like
Yeah.
heaps of shit. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, and in myself, like knowing that I was gay, I was like, what the fuck? Like, they're all trying to say like I was after these people's boyfriends, that I was sleeping with all these dudes, that I was pregnant, like all this stuff. And I was like, you know, like 14, like dealing with that, being like,
That's insane.
yeah, I was like, this is actually
So it
insane.
would have just compounded the fuckery, basically.
Yeah,
when
yeah,
you're already
absolutely.
going through that, like, so that's at 14. So that's before
Yeah.
you've come to the point where you're like,
Yeah,
hey,
I can
I'm
tell
gonna-
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then like I think that kind of like not put pressure on, but I was like, I think was kind of like, not that I owe it to anybody, but I was like, I need to let people know that that's who I am, because like I'm getting this really shit stuff said about me all the time. That's not true. Like literally they just knew that I was gay. Like they wouldn't be saying that stuff.
Yeah.
And then
Which
I
just
like,
sucks because it's like, feel like I have to clear my name, or I want to, because this stuff is so left. Like, it's not even that it's,
Yeah.
you know, if you're just straight, then it's untrue. But it's like, not only is it untrue, I can't think of anything that I want
Worse.
less than
Yeah.
any of those things. Like, I'm like,
Literally.
yeah.
Literally, yeah. It was crazy. And then I ended up leaving that school because I could not deal with all the craziness that was that school. Like not even
Of
just
course,
with that,
yeah.
but like everything like that school was fucking shit.
Yeah, it is terrible.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it is Salisbury.
And I'm
Yeah,
down the road
exactly.
at Paralawi, and they're both just two peas in a pod, so I can
exactly.
very much-
You know,
I've
they're
heard so much
bad.
about Paralawi at
Dude,
12. I swear to God
they-
that I was like been there. Like,
They were
Yeah,
both like
they're both
cesspools, man. They
literally.
were so bad. And,
Nothing
and then
good can come to those
Parafield was
schools.
like it's like the Bermuda Triangle of like
Yes,
shit schools.
it
It's like
was.
because we all had such big crossovers because like we all worked at like. So like I made so many friends through Parafield because working at Paralawi Hungry
Yeah.
Jacks, which was like bang smack between the two schools.
Yeah.
And then like people would work at Salisbury but go to Paralawi. And
Yeah.
go, so it was like
Yeah,
all
yeah,
this
yeah.
intertwining as teenagers between those three schools. And then
Yeah.
everyone at Thomas More can get fucked. But
Absolutely. Fuck
yeah.
those guys.
yeah, fuck those guys. But yeah, so it's like, but they were all just as bad as each other.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you'd be like, oh man, you're going to Parafield, you lucked out. Like,
Yeah.
there was a camaraderie as well because we
There
all
was.
knew that we were just dealing with like fuckery. Everyone had pedo teachers. Everyone had fucking like just all of just the worst shit.
Yeah,
so,
it was
um,
not a good time.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
I keep-
So then I before I left Salisbury, I like acted like a fuckwit because like I was done with everyone's shit, and I
Mhm.
like did some shit that I should not have done. Just like went off the rails school wise. So I left and just didn't go. Like I just stopped going.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not dealing with that. I'm not going back. And then through having been quite naughty at school and then not going for ages, I got assigned a social worker from Department of Education.
Oh my god, it's so crazy to imagine.
so is that
I
where
know,
this
it's so
kind
funny,
of like
isn't it?
leads into your job now?
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
cool,
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
That's
so
so
like
cool.
I feel like that point in my life like really led into a lot of different things for me, which was like again reflectively fucking cool. Like really
Yeah.
cool to like look back and be like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's cool.
But at the time,
but at the
definitely
time-
not how you feel.
Yeah, at the time I was just like, everything fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I ended up going to Bowden Brompton, which
Yep.
was the school for naughty kids. It still is a school for naughty kids.
Yeah.
And I was literally, when I got there, I was the only girl in the school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was literally the only girl.
What a fucking rebel like that you've
I
named
know.
that you made for
Yeah.
yourself to be the
They
only
must have been
girl.
like, she's a bad bitch, man. Like,
What is it? Can you tell, like, obviously I don't want you to unpack it all, but can you tell, like, because I just see you as the most innocent human being of all time, can you give us a little glimpse of like what like rebellious Abbie was doing at But to get
Just
herself.
being an asshole.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
just
a general asshole.
Yeah, like just I'd go to class and then just get up like in the middle of class and just like throw shit or like argue with the teachers. And like I was always like, my dad always taught me to like stand up for myself in like using your words as opposed to like fists and stuff. So I'd get up and like try to have like intellectual debates with the teachers so much that it would piss them off.
Yeah.
And then they'd be like, get out. And I'd be like, you fucking get out, and just be like annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And then like I would go and take my uniform off and just like walk around the school and like knock on doors and like stir everybody up and just be annoying. It's
Yeah.
just really annoying.
and just so checked out from the whole,
Yeah.
which I mean, the education system's a fucking joke
Yeah,
anyway, so
well,
we don't
yeah.
even
Absolutely.
need to. We don't even need to get into how bad it does
Yeah.
it. trying to manage those kinds of things or understanding the root cause of it. But obviously, as we know, you're not going to get away with that kind of shit and then you end up at the fucking naughty school.
Yeah,
That's
then I'm at the
crazy.
naughty school.
So this is, how old are you by the time you've started there?
15. So I was out of school for nearly a whole year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so this is still before you're out though?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah. And
so
then
you're at the naughty school?
Went to the naughty school, only girl, which again was like really like, ooh, there's like all these boys and they were like really naughty boys. And I was like, still didn't feel super comfortable to be out because I was like, there's a lot of boys here. And like,
but it's also
like,
back
what's
then,
gonna happen?
you've got misdiagnosed autism, misdiagnosed ADHD, like that. We just had no understanding. They just
any
thought
of that stuff.
Boys were naughty.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which was like, there was actually, when we look back, I remember looking back at my schooling, the amount that were actually just naughty, which still is not even really a good word, but the most that were like purposefully disruptive was actually quite a small percentage, like misunderstood and misdiagnosed, miss all of those kinds of things.
Absolutely,
made up such a larger chunk of what you were dealing with. So that was obviously would have made it even more confronting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being in that situation.
And I thinking back now and like being in the job that I know, like I can think about half those boys, even more than that, and just think like, what the fuck was going on at home? That's what it like led them to where they were.
Yeah,
it wasn't even like the
exactly,
fact that they were shitheads. Like
they
were going through some shit. Like so was I. Like you know,
absolutely.
Yeah. So going there and like the boys, they were all super lovely to me. Like they were feral, most of them. Like they were so lovely to me. I think I was the only girl. A lot of them got super protective of me, which was really cool. But then I think like weirdly having like been, I guess, with more boys, I was like, yeah, like I'm not interested in any of you. Like, you know, like a teenage girl's dream being in a school with all boys. You'd be like, hell yeah. And I was like, oh no.
I wonder how different it would have been if you'd stayed like in a mixed environment. You know what I mean? Like where it's just like a whole bunch of girls and what they have to say about you compared to this other experience that you got where it was all dudes.
Yeah, I think it would have been vastly different.
Because it would have like somehow like confirmed in your head, going, I don't give a fuck about any of these.
Yeah, probably made it even earlier. Like,
yeah, I think so too. Because then there was no girls. Like, whereas at like Salisbury, like there was girls, and I would look at them and be like, but there's nothing I could do about it. You know?
Oh, that's great. But then, so then you're missing that as well. You're like, oh, not only do I not feel anything for you, I've not even got the stimulation I was at least getting like, as I'm going through like puberty.
Yeah, exactly. And then, I think I met a girl who actually went to your shithouse school, who you know. And then, so I met her through a mutual friend who also went to Paralawi.
Yep. Represent.
Yeah. And so I'd stayed friends with this girl from Paralawi. So we actually went to the Salisbury High School induction together. And that's how I met her. And then we stayed friends. And then she introduced me to a girl on MSN Messenger.
Oh, of course. Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
And I literally remember like the first time we talked and she had a profile picture of her little sister. And I was like, dude, the fuck's with your picture? And she's like, that's me. And I was like, no, but you're 15. That's not you. And like just this random conversation. Her like tagline was a System of a Down song. And I was
on the MSN, you had to have your quote.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You had to.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if we talked about this on the pod before, but the ones that always I think of, right, is hell yeah, I'm the motherfucking princess. Every girl had that.
It's true.
And every girl also had lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off. That was always the fucking classic.
And at the very end, you had to have the love heart emoji with whoever you were talking to at the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love heart
and those like little squiggle things too. Like
Or the heart made out of S and 2 instead of a heart. It's like, who has a conventional heart when you can S 2 of that? Fuck, dude, MSN, what a time. We must have had. We must have
100%. Yeah,
that must have been how.
MSN was fucking sick.
It was great.
Nudging bitches,
and then being like BRB.
I was just gonna say, BRB away from keyboard.
I love that there's a meme at the moment that's like, I can't believe on MSN I used to say BRB when I went to the toilet. Now someone messages me and I ghost them for 5 months.
It's true.
It's
so funny.
Yeah, I haven't heard the BRB in
ages. Like G to G as well.
Got to go.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah.
Dad needs to make a phone call on the on the what do you call it, on the home phone?
On the landline, yeah.
But that was LOL time, wasn't it?
Yeah, LOL is that's
LOL kind
that's
of
the like when Roffle and LeMayo and everything really came into its own.
True.
Was,
Rofflecopter and shit.
Yeah, all of that.
Oh my God.
Awesome language.
I know, right?
What was your, while we're on it, what's your cringiest Hotmail?
Oh, I don't know if you want to know
Please.
it. Okay.
Please.
it was the only one I ever actually had.
Okay, yep.
Was Princess of Darkness Bites.
What was the last one?
Bites.
Bites. Oh,
Yeah.
Princess of Darkness Bites.
Yeah, but it was like
So
princess
long.
with a capital P and then a capital S at the end, underscore. Then like everyone had the beginning and last letter was capital S and an underscore between each word.
Oh, that's so like not practical at all.
Not at all. It was so annoying to write in.
Yeah, that's so. I think we've said this before because we know mine was Big Bad _ J-Man.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Fuck. I never had anything
I've been big, but I've never been bad in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know
Mine
why.
was a little bit cringy because it was just RYRY 666.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a little bit cringy. Little bit
But not
cringy.
too
Not
bad.
too
Yeah.
That's not too
Yeah.
bad. Right, though. I do like that. I'm going to
Yeah,
refer
that's
to
because like a lot of kids, they can't actually say my name. So there's Right.
Right.
They just do the first two syllables.
Right, well, I'm only going to
Right.
call you Right from now on. Because I think
Yeah,
that's,
fuck
Right.
Fuck yeah.
You're tuning in with Right and Jay Mezza.
Oh my god.
All right, so we've been sidetracked from this story.
Yeah, we are,
so
we
we're
are.
20 minutes in and we're still on the first question.
Oh,
So,
shit.
you're at Bowden, you're a naughty kid, you've got lots of protective, definitely not boyfriend material,
Yeah,
and you've
definitely
realised
not.
that.
No.
And then you're leading into your coming out at some point. very
Yes.
soon.
So meeting Jess.
Yep.
And on MSN Messenger, and then she had a boyfriend, and so like we were just friends, and then we got the bus up to TTP as you did.
Yeah, classic.
Yeah. And I remember like just being like, she's gay. I know she's gay.
Yeah.
I was like, no.
The
I'm not
gaydar
having-
was going off.
Yeah, I was like, I do not
Yeah.
have a bar of this. And her boyfriend was like star of the basketball team at Paralawi and like, "Muh." And I remember like when he came and he met us, and then she kissed him goodbye, and she was looking at me the whole time. She was like kissing him.
Fuck.
And like 15, so you know when you're 15, that's like a big deal. And I was like, she likes me. I like her. This is a thing. And then like we hung out a lot, and then we both ended up like having a little crush on each other. She left her boyfriend for me.
Oh.
That's a big power move.
It was a big power
That's something you
move.
talk about on a pod 15 years later.
Yeah.
That's a power move. Right?
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, even better though, because then her boyfriend like wrote her a letter and was like, I don't see what you see in her.
Oh my God.
What does she have that I don't have?
And the
That was
fact that he
literally
put
what
it
he
You're like,
said.
well, there's definitely some genitals that are
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
What does she have? No, actually, she has less. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm looking
That's what
for
I
that,
mean too.
actually.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So then we ended up together. I still wasn't out to everybody, but like we were together probably.
So enough that anyone around you is like, well, cool, that we know what's going on here.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then you hadn't kind of like had the family conversation or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. And my mum was in denial massively. My dad and my sister actually went to the UK together.
Yeah.
Around the time that her and I were like dating. And
Do you have more than one sister? Because I know
no.
one. You just got one.
yeah, and
That's
brother.
it. And the brother. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
So they were in England, and I didn't go because I was like actually into school finally, and I was like, I want to like do school, and they went away, and then I stayed with my mum, and so Jess like was always staying over like all the time, and mum just was like, oh, you know, they're two girls having sleepovers, that's fine.
Yeah.
She's like,
Yeah.
whatever. And then Dad and Bonnie came back, and like they met Jess and whatever, and I remember like it was like only a couple of days Dad had been home. And I remember like literally I was in the kitchen and I grabbed out a jar of peanut butter and I turned around and Dad was like, so Jess is gay? And I was like, what, Dad? What do you mean? And he's like, yeah, you two are together, aren't you? And I was like so thrown off because like I'd gone months with like my mum hadn't realized, and then like Dad had been back 2 seconds and he was just all over
I know
it.
what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah. And my dad was a social worker too, so he
It
was
smells like gay in
Yeah.
Yeah, he would have had the radar.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
for
he
sure.
was like going off.
Was that when it was like, all right, here's
I was
the-
like, yeah, I can't deny
Yeah,
it now.
yeah,
Like, there's no point lying about it.
Yeah.
She was already out to her family. She'd actually only lived in Adelaide for about a year when we met. She was from New South Wales. So she had told her family in New South Wales. I think it was a bit easier because they were super far away. And told her dad. And she'd only like known her dad that whole time. Like, she didn't know him growing up and stuff. So I think that was a bit like, what choice did he have? Like, you know, you've just met her. You can't be like, I mean, you could, but you know. And then so I was like, yep. That's what's going on. Cool. Thanks, Dad. And I was like,
was that relieving at all, or was that added more stress to it, or how did you feel, I guess, at that time?
both. Like, I felt relief that I didn't have to tell them. Like it just kind of came out. Like
That's cool. Yeah, you didn't have to sit down and be like,
yeah, because I was like
party
at that
popper.
time. Yeah, exactly. Surprise.
Yeah.
At that time, like I had literally been thinking like, how am I going to tell them? How am I going to tell them? How am I going to tell them? And actually, I'd already told my auntie, which is my mum's sister.
Yeah.
I'd told her, but she was a Volt, like whatever. She didn't give a fuck. She was like, yeah, that's cool. Like, love you.
Yeah.
And she's the only person. So I was like, at some point, I'm going to have to tell my family. And I was like, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? And then when Dad asked me, I was like, sick, that's how I'm going to do it.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks,
that's
Dad.
awesome. Yeah,
So that was really
tasteless.
cool. But then I asked him not to tell my mum until I was ready. He did not do that. He told my mum.
Oh, of course.
So that was really the only thing that in the whole situation that was like upsetting, I guess, because I felt like that was taken away from me.
Yeah.
In his mind, like I know he was just like, I didn't want to keep something from your mum. And I was
Yeah.
like, I get that, but like that was my thing to tell her.
Yeah.
And she is just a super awkward human in general. Like she tried to have the sex talk and stuff with me before and it just didn't pan out. So then her trying to have that conversation with me was hilarious.
Yeah.
And she, you know, like pulled me into the lounge. She'd be like, do you have something to tell me? And I was like, nah. She's like, I think you do. I was like, nah, Mum, what are you talking about? She's like, your father already told me, so just tell me. And I was like,
Oh.
Then you're thinking to yourself, like, if you didn't realize by now, like, there's probably nothing.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to explain it to you when you
Exactly.
didn't already know?
Yeah. And then, so then she was just like, oh, so now I know what your sleepovers are about. And like, just super awkward. But I was 15, super angsty. Me and my mum didn't get along when I was a teenager. So I was just like, instead of just being a rational human, I was like, can't fucking believe Dad told you. And just like went off and just made a bigger deal out of it than I needed to. But I was 15, so whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how, I guess, like, from there, kind of, you've got a partner then and you're sort of like out and about in the world. Again, it's still a very different time.
Absolutely.
How was that for you? And how did you kind of deal with that? And I guess looking, you know, we love mental health talk all the time. So I guess I'd just love to kind of unpack that a bit about how you found that and what kind of was good for you and what was bad for you in that time and things like that.
Yeah. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
The world was a terrifying place. Like being when you're 15, it's a terrifying place anyway. Like
Of course.
it's messed up.
Yeah.
Being newly out, like we didn't know anyone else that was gay, like at all. That like our age anyway. Like everyone that I knew that was gay was like in their 60s. Like, you know, they were like older and you know, so it was absolutely terrifying. And being two girls, I mean, it would have been the same for boys, but like being two young girls, it was disgusting. Like we would go to the shops together and stuff and people would say stuff to like, we're 15. Like keep in mind the fact that we were 15 and you'd have like grown men being like, I could change you. All you need is my dick.
Oh, wow.
That is
wow. And it was disgusting. Like it's disgusting anyway. But then like I think about the fact that I was 15.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, and these were like grown ass men. Like we'd have truck drivers like tooting at us like as we were walking down the street, like hold hands and stuff like that. So there were things that like we didn't feel like we could do, but we wanted to do it. Like we weren't ashamed of who we were, which was really cool. Like both of us were super proud of who we were.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
But
So,
it's
like,
hard when society is trying to force you back into your box kind of thing. You know what I mean? Which is like so insane. And I'm like, I mean, it still happens now, which is, it is a lot better. We're in a lot better place than where we were, but
it still happens.
you know, it's just crazy to think of. And that was really bold, I guess, of you guys to tackle that back then. Because as I said, I know people that are only just now starting to really be able to, and you know, as much as it makes me happy for them that they're able to do it now, it makes me sad for them that they've
couldn't do it earlier.
possibly waited till 28, 29 or something to go, hey, this is who I really am. And, you know, kind of lost a massive chunk of their time being able to be honest.
Hugely.
And a lot of that is parent and stuff as well. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just the world. The world is crazy, but it's even sadder to me how many people's parents, like I know stories of people being like, you know, they say that there's one of the, because you know how, I don't know what it is, but like families will quite often have multiple gay people in the thing, like however it works in the gene pool. So like I know someone who like the eldest son came out as gay and then the parents like said to the daughter, like, if you come out gay as well, we'll kill ourselves. Like, what the fuck kind of thing is that to say to your kid? So that's, I think, the thing that's so heartbreaking for me is that it comes from people that should care about you the most. Like you understand the dichotomy of a piece of shit male saying that thing doesn't make it okay by any stretch, but like it's not surprising or it's not as like unexpected when you have the scumbag male on the street, but to have your own parents be like, oh, if you end up gay as well, and that
that's awful.
girl was like going through that and you know was wanting to come out.
Yeah, and then that's
so
just
you
like
just set
absolutely
that
not.
back by however many years, making her question herself. Like you're literally saying that you would end your own life over it. And for what? It doesn't affect you in any
Not
way.
at all.
Like they think obviously, oh, well, you know, we can't be the parents of all these, like, what did we do wrong? It's like, but it's not. Why do you see it like that?
Exactly.
Why do you see it as that there's something wrong? Like they just are who they are. So I'm glad at least, again, you know, you had a pretty good run with the family other than, you know, it not being on your terms as much. But yeah, it would have been incredibly hard. Is there anything that really sticks out as, I guess, the biggest challenge you've faced with that side of stuff before we move into all the other awesome shit that you
like with family stuff?
Yeah, or just in the world, I guess, you know. You're the first person I think that we've had on the podcast that we've been able to talk to about.
Yeah,
so,
actually, yeah.
And I'm sure that there's plenty of people listening that, you know, might have gone through this or whatever there as well. So is there something that I think from the mental health perspective that's been the biggest challenge that you've faced?
I feel like
other than there being a very short supply of lesbians in Adelaide,
Yes.
and you've literally all fucking dated each other. Like,
I'm pretty sure I'm done with all of them
It is
now.
insane.
Oh, I don't doubt.
Being around it now for over 12 years, and like I know the entire circle.
Yeah.
now. Like, there's very few that I can be introduced to. That the ones that I've even met people. Or I've met a lesbian through a friend, and then they know like Abbie and Jess and because it's so
It's a community.
it's a little incestuous, but it's just insane now. But you know, obviously because the problem is as well is that there's obviously more that don't move in the circles or whatever. So you know you will be able to pluck that one out of obscurity every now and then who hasn't joined the network yet, but. As soon as they're in the network,
Absolutely,
you know, then there's
they're in the network, mate.
there's only a very limited.
and I feel like it is a bigger pool now.
Of course.
Yeah,
because
of course.
people are like more free to be out or more like feel more comfortable, safer, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whereas like back then, like, and it isn't really that long ago, but then it wasn't the same. Like people didn't feel as comfortable to come out. So we did have a really small group because when you found someone that was gay, you were like, like friend, like you can relate to them.
And
then,
even
like,
bisexual now.
Oh,
There's a lot more people that are bisexual too.
Yeah.
So like, you know, that also makes
It's
the
just
pool
that
bigger.
comfortability that's
absolutely.
around now. Like people aren't so afraid to like, you know, be like not the norm, not what the societal expectations are. So they're like,
absolutely,
and so
which is so
it's
cool.
just it is such a better place.
Yeah.
But it was a crazy time. I mean, we can't have you on the pod without talking about my favorite
I knew you were
story
gonna
of
do
all
this.
time.
I knew it.
Again, we won't name names, but one of the nights where Abbie's picked us up from town, and there was a friend. Like you guys are still friends now, aren't you?
No, not at all. No.
Oh,
No,
okay. Well, that's
no,
that's
but
why we're not saying any names.
Yeah, we were for a
But
long
this
time.
girl, this girl was
Old mate 2.0.
another old mate 2.0. Obviously, and again, like I'm like the loveliest dude ever. So I'm,
No,
this is. I wasn't being when I tell this story, I wasn't being a jerk. or
You
anything
weren't
as
at
well,
all.
right?
Not at all.
So we're in a car full, right? There's me and old mate number 1, and then now we've got old mate number 2.
So you had both old mates in the car?
In the car
Yeah,
at the
both
same
old
time.
mates. Yeah.
Okay.
And-
and someone else because it was a full car. We had someone else in the front. Maybe Jess.
Maybe Jess was in the front.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to talk to old mate number 2, like just being nice, right? And we're like, oh, so, you know, you had work tonight or whatever. And she so didn't want to talk to us. And I don't know if it was because we were males and obviously she was going through her own thing. Like we can make up. But, and she was just like, pull the car over. Like she literally just, and we were like, hey, we were just like trying to say, and she's like, literally just pull over. I'm getting out now. And Abbie's like, what the fuck? Shut up. Like I'm driving you home. Like stop like freaking
I'm not
out.
pulling
And
the
she's
car
like,
over.
literally stop. And me and old mate number 1 are sitting there like, what did we do? And we obviously don't want to upset the whatever because, you know, we're getting the lift home as well. But we had no idea what we did wrong, but it's just one of my favorite stories of all time of just like
Yeah,
the
and we were like
most-
on Port Road at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and she was literally like, "Pull the car over," and I was like,
she sober?
"No." Was she sober?
I don't think she
No.
was at that time.
okay, yeah,
So
could
and,
have been
and we were obviously drunk, like, probably drunk
Yeah,
as well.
I think we picked her up from work. She worked at a bar as well, and then she would just like drink afterwards.
Yeah.
Well, we're giving away hints now. People are going to be able to know. But yeah, it was just like one of those. But again, it was because of if I look back at that now through the lens of, you know, what I know now, again, because it was such a hard time and, you know, there was a lot more of that resent for, you know, for say girls like yourself that are going through all of that. And when you've had, like, obviously, whether it's shit dads or males yelling shit at you and saying, I can change your fucking mind with my dick and whatever, like, there was a lot more of that, like, something like say that she was going through the struggle. So she was just like, I can't even handle the fucking male energy in this fucking car right now. And I'm glad that we are, as a society, moving into a better place where, like, you know, you would hope that people don't have those kinds of experiences. It's hilarious for us to talk about now. But at the end of the day, all I'm thinking, even at that age, I'm like, I would never want someone to feel that uncomfortable.
Yeah, you don't want someone to feel threatened by you or whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I mean, again, you know, my friend should have given it away. I was clearly a friendly guy. We're wearing the same jeans.
Come on.
But yeah, so I guess back to the question: is there anything other than the limited amount of vaginas? Is there anything that sticks out as, I guess, probably your biggest challenge that you've faced?
I think the biggest thing for me, and being as strong-headed as I am and wanting to be super like fuck the world, was the fact that like it just always felt like the whole world was saying no. Like, if you were gay, you couldn't get married, you couldn't have kids, you couldn't do the normal things. And I don't like, obviously I can't speak for everybody that was going through the same thing at the same time as me, but like it felt like we weren't allowed to have that. Like, I never wanted to have kids, so that wasn't a thing for me, but like being told that I couldn't, and like I, you know, then thinking that like
it's unnatural, that it's this and it's that, and, you know,
and like and that felt awful, like that the whole world was literally saying like that's not your path, like you cannot have those things. And then, you know, as I even like started to get older, like early 20s and stuff, and like my friends started getting engaged and they started having kids and things like that, and like straight friends, and like being like that was normal, and the little gays were over here, we were like, yeah, you'd have relationships, but it always felt like you were in the relationship for like that the world was telling you like what's the point, because you're not going to get married, you're not going to do those things, this isn't going to last forever. Like the world was always kind of saying, you're over here in your little black spot, you're all going to fuck each other, and that's all you're ever going to be, that's all you're ever going to do. Whereas like, you know, obviously getting married and having kids isn't the only thing, but it just felt like that the world was saying like the path that everyone else is on, like buying a home even, like those kind of things aren't for you. So like you get to watch all your friends do that, and you guys just stay over there and just like
well, isn't it good that like now the world, well, from my point of view anyway, has become so much more accepting and like inclusive of like, hey, marriage doesn't even have to be between a male and a female. It can be female and female, and you're allowed to have that sacred right as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's really cool.
But it was still a very like
it's a hard path. That's for sure.
And I couldn't believe how much there was still just such an archaic mindset of people when it's not that long ago that it was. You know what I mean? Like the fact that it's still only as recent as what it was, that we were behind America.
I know how embarrassing is that.
It was still just such a slog where like everyone was just like having their opinion about it, and it's like the fact that we even had to do a vote is just insane. Like it should have just been something that's like there's a supply and demand, really. Like it should have been like there's a market here for it, and anyone who's actually in the industry is like, this is the best thing that's ever fucking happened.
We're making more money than ever.
That's right. Because I mean, first of all, these motherfuckers are spending big, right? Because they're now celebrating, because a lot of these have been wanting to do this for a long time. This money's been sitting there ready to go, but it's just like the opinions of people that it just didn't impact at all. And you know, it's like anything in the world, but that for me, I'm glad that it's a thing now, but the fact that it took us so long,
I know,
I'm sure that's why. That is probably the perfect thing that you've mentioned there about why just feeling, even though you feel exactly where you're meant to be, you know, doing exactly what you feel is right for you, but then having the world as a whole make you feel, but based on what you're limited to, or what the way everyone treats you is like, well, no, you're not. Yeah, that's cool. You've had your thing, and it's not a choice, but still you're weird and whatever. And it's just like there's still that like little like global resentment for you being like, we just don't like it. And I guess maybe that's never going to go away. You know, there's still, I mean, till all the fucking boomers die. Do you still run into anything these days, or you're pretty? Do you have a way better time of it now?
Yeah, I think like I'm super resilient anyway. Like a lot of that stuff would just kind of wash over me now anyway. If someone did say something, I would be like, fucking excuse me.
Do you want me to dig out 15-year-old like troublemaker?
Exactly. Because I'll do it. I'll do it. I think now like probably the biggest thing is people just saying like, oh, you don't look gay. Like gay looks like something.
Yeah, what the hell?
Like, and I'm like, how the fuck are people still saying that to me now? Like, like how?
So weird. What a weird thing to say. Again, if they were judging me on what I look like in Mars Bar, I was definitely in the place I was meant to be.
Yeah, and like people just being like, oh, like when they find out, being like, oh, I never knew that. Like, why?
Yeah,
Should,
why would you? Yeah, what's the fucking telltale?
What is that? Yeah.
Yeah. So like people's like go-to is always that you're straight. Like that's, when you meet someone, they're automatically thinking.
Yeah. And then they've got to be like convinced that so dumb.
Yeah. So that's really shit. And I think like how that affects people is like is underestimated a lot. So
Absolutely. Yeah. It's massive. And I guess that's why we wanted to, and I'm sorry for like, harping on it, but I just think it's such a amazing thing. And again, you offer such great insights, but we want to now, I guess, move into, we've kind of touched on it briefly through that journey. Obviously the passion for it came from your now social work. You've been a social worker for 14 years, which is insane.
Yes.
And we're old as shit and that's scary. But so what did you, obviously you've been doing it for 14 years, so you've pretty much come out of school and gotten into it.
Into it, yeah.
So you were just obviously a part of the system and then went, this is what I want to do. Like how early did you know? I mean, obviously it had to be early to be doing it for 14 years, but you're not long. Did you come straight from school and while you were getting yourself back into school and being like, I need to take this seriously now, was it already then that you're like, I want to already give back to this community that's kind of helped me a bit now? Yeah,
in a way, I think so. Like my dad was a social worker, like I mentioned before. But he worked with people that had brain injuries. He worked with at the Autism Association, so he worked with kids that were autistic. And again, we had a very different understanding of what that was back then. So back then it wasn't like as accepted as it was now. It was kind of like kids that people just couldn't fucking handle. So he worked with those kids. And we used to do respite. So we'd have autistic kids come and like stay with us at home and stuff. And I always had that growing up. And
so you've already got the work experience.
I was already good to go. And then so when I went to Bowden, the environment was so fucking different there. Like going from Salisbury where like the teachers had no idea who you were unless you caused trouble basically, to going to Bowden where the classes were really small. The teachers actually gave a fuck. Like my teachers were so lovely and they were like so interactive. Everyone knew who you were. Everyone knew everybody. Like everything was just so cool there. That it was just such a different experience that I was like, I actually really like school. And these are adults that I actually like. Like I'd never knew that was like a thing. Yeah. And it was so different. And at Bowden, like they did like pathways and stuff like that. Like they would try to get you. And again, that's super common now, but then it wasn't super common. Like vet pathways and stuff wasn't really a thing then. And I remember them like taking me to TAFE and like other kids. And we used to have like special things where they would take us to TAFEs and around and like you'd get to look at the courses. And I wanted to be a wedding dress designer.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Super random, and I can't draw. I've never been able to draw in my life.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
And you also couldn't get married.
I couldn't get married. I know.
I can't get married.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of being like, fuck you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm going to be in weddings. I'm going to be in weddings somehow.
Yeah, I'm going to put myself in there, make you all uncomfortable.
Yeah. So you can jump out like, by the way, designed by a gay woman who can't get married.
Hide little like rainbow flags in the studio or something.
Oh my God.
So with your youth work, is there any story in particular that has really stood out to you and like impacted you personally?
From like the kids that I've worked with?
Yeah, from the people that you've worked with.
So many. So many.
Is there one though that if you're going to only tell one story, obviously not naming the person, but like, how has it kind of like their story or the way they've been treated then impacted you? Like
that's really hard. Because I've always worked, so like I work in homelessness specifically, and I've worked in homelessness for 10 years. The first like 4 years I've worked in like disadvantaged areas in Adelaide. So I've always kind of worked with people who basically were homeless or on the verge of. So everyone's story has been really, really impactful. Like every story is different. Like I worked with kids that like are siblings and like even twins, like literally grown up exactly the same time in the same area, and their stories are still so different.
Right.
And it's wild like how different they are. I think just like I'm trying to think of like one story, but every kid's story is like super like because it's so different. Like it's really, I guess it humbles you. Like I always just think, how the fuck are these kids like alive? Like literally, how are they alive? If I try to think of one story, it's probably like the one that was more relatable to me. That probably she had the biggest impact on me. For the fact that she reminded me so much of myself as a kid.
Okay.
Was a young girl that I worked with in a shelter when I worked in a shelter in the city. And I think she was 17 at the time. And she was lovely. She was such a sweet young girl. And she was gay and she had been kicked out of home for being gay. So she was homeless
Okay.
literally
Oh
for
my
being
God.
gay.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah, and it was awful.
Circling back to the parent being pieces of shit
Exactly.
fucking comment
Yeah.
that we just made before.
Yeah, and she like was literally the nicest girl, and she just like she felt like she couldn't be herself because she had got kicked out for being gay. Like she just came out to her dad and he kicked her out. And she had also like, which is, you'll know why this is so relatable for me. She was also vegan, and her dad literally said to her, well, like he made her a steak intentionally really, really rare one day and was like, put it on the table and was like, if you don't eat this, you're not my daughter.
Right.
And was like going to disown her over that. And then like, so she ate it because she was like, fuck. And and felt awful about herself. And she like made herself sick from like, she didn't want to eat her body. So she made herself sick.
Yeah.
Which then started a long thing of like her being bulimic and
Right.
anorexic. And,
Yeah.
and then for him to kick her out when she came out anyway. So like all these things, like he just wasn't accepting, like he had an idea of what he wanted. And then anything that didn't fit that, like he just did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just so sad, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was awful. And like she ended up moving out and like I never really had much to do with her. Like there's some kids that I worked with that like over the years I've seen again, and like there's I know what their follow-up story is. I don't know what her follow-up story is, but her story was just like really like in a different way, really impactful. Like whereas like I've had kids who, you know, I worked with another kid whose dad used to literally put him in like a bath, hold him down and like whip him
Oh wow.
in water, like, and he would bleed and he was covered in scars. And
Yeah.
you know, like, so I've worked with kids that dealt with really heavy trauma, really heavy abuse, like lots and lots of stuff. So literally when you like, you think about a story, my head just goes like,
Yeah.
So was there a reason that you, obviously again, you know, you didn't struggle with homelessness or anything yourself growing up. So was there anything that, I guess, was it just by chance that you ended up down that pathway and now have been doing it for 10 years? Or was that something that you were intrigued by, like, because of that? What kind of took you down that path particularly?
like homelessness in particular? I think, so my first youth work job was, well, I started out as a trainee in youth work and I met a guy that worked at the council at the time, and he was working in homelessness and drug and alcohol and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And I really like, we were working at the Parks Community Centre at the time, which was a super disadvantaged area at the time. And so we were working with kids who were living well below the poverty line. And so that kind of stuff, like I noticed I just had a real passion for like working with those kids in particular.
Yeah.
When I was younger, like my dad, he had a lot of friends that like tattooists and stuff like that. And I remember when I was a kid and we used to go to, my dad's friend worked at Hindley Tattoo. And I remember being like quite young and standing out in front of Hindley Tattoo and like a lot of homeless people on Hindley Street back then, especially.
Course, yeah.
And there was a homeless man walking down the street and he was talking to people and people were being really rude to him and like not talking to him or being like, fuck off. And I just like was kind of standing there. And I said to my dad, like, why aren't people talking to him? And dad was like, because he's homeless and people think that that means that he's scary.
Right.
And I was like, but he doesn't look scary. And dad's like, he probably isn't. Like, he's just homeless. That's not his fault. And then dad was like, you can go talk to him if you want to go talk to him. And I was like, oh, okay. And then like, I just went up to him and I was like, hey, like I was a kid. Like I didn't know, like, you know, and then he obviously was like quite mentally unwell, but he like, I just had this conversation with this guy. And like that to me, I think I always remember that conversation. Like for ages, I think I had forgotten about it. And then like I reflect on it and I'm like, I think that really like just that little conversation that my dad would just been like blindly having with his daughter, like not thinking much of it.
Catalyst for
that's
what
really
now
cool.
is going to be your life's work. Basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have worked at shelters and things like that you mentioned before. Is that what are you doing now specifically? Obviously 14 years into your journey. What's your day to day at the moment?
So I'm a senior youth worker at a shelter.
Yep.
So the shelter that I'm at now is 8 kids. So we have kids that are 15 to 18.
Yep.
So we don't work with kids that are under Department of Child Protection. We work with kids that the department basically doesn't give a fuck about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I was gonna say, like, there's a lot of things that I could say about the department, but
Yeah.
you
Of course,
know,
it's government, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
They're
that's
shit.
what this podcast is for.
Yeah,
really,
we
is
hate
shitting
that.
on government, so.
This is the 70th episode of us shitting on government.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
yes. But they like, you know, kids are either removed really young or they're not removed at all, regardless of like what's going on. It's really hard for kids to get removed when they're older, and you know that can still be historical abuse. Like I've seen kids, you know, that super historical abuse that have never been removed. And then they're, 15, 16, 17, and they're still living in these situations. And the department is like, meh, they're going to be 18 soon. So why would we bother? So we basically work with those kids. The kids that like the government doesn't give a fuck about, that have forgotten about. So I work with them in the shelter. So yeah, we have 8 kids at any time at the shelter. They live with us, so we teach them the things that their parents are basically meant to teach them. So we cooking, cleaning, budgeting, all that kind of stuff. We're getting them into like education, employment, whatever it is that they want to do.
Yeah.
Teaching them about real life, it sounds like.
Yeah, exactly.
So, because I find quite often schools and shit, they don't teach you about
Nothing.
real
Life. It's nothing about life.
Like, so
Yeah,
and
I've used algebra
so
so many fucking times.
Oh,
since
yeah,
I've
so
time.
people that are
many.
already so disadvantaged that don't have the family, or in the case of the other one you were saying that the dad was abusing them physically or mentally or whatever, then I guess having this extra place to go to would just makes the world of difference. And for you, being able to give these people that education and that kind of like extra leg up in life would probably really make you feel fulfilled. Like,
yeah, it's awesome. Like it can be super stressful because again, you're working with teenagers in general.
Yeah.
It can be a nightmare of a time.
Teenagers who have suffered extreme abuse
Exactly.
or emotional trauma. I guess that kind of segues perfectly into what I want to ask you around, when you're dealing with something that is super, super heavy like that, how do you go about regulating your own mental health and looking after yourself? It must be hard to obviously not leave yourself behind, because it's one of those things as well where, you've constantly got that whole like, well, my situation's not that bad, so like, but you can't neglect yourself. You can't just let yourself fall by the wayside, because at the end of the day, you need it. The only way that you can be the best for them is also being the best version of yourself. So how do you go about tackling that side of things? Like, what are the things that you do to, I guess, keep your head above water when dealing with stuff that is super, super heavy all the time?
I think, again, like I'm super strong-headed, super resilient, but that doesn't mean that like I'm invincible, obviously. If I look at it from like a work perspective, the thing for me is like, because we do work, like the environment is super challenging. It's absolutely not for everyone. I've seen people burn out really quickly, and I don't want to burn out. Like I want to be here for these kids for as long as I possibly can be.
Yeah.
So in my work, like I look for like the smallest little win. So like a kid going to school for even half a day, like that's a win.
Yeah.
And instead of being like, oh, for fuck's sake, he missed half the day, it's like, no, man, he went half the day. That's so good.
Yeah.
So like I always take like those little achievements that like might seem like nothing, like they're huge things. And like, so I celebrate them and I carry them, and I'm always like, these are really big things.
Yeah.
Like,
This is why I do this.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like that, because then instead of you focusing on the end goal, and then when if you don't reach it, you're just like, fuck, it did make an impact. But if you're like, you're focusing on these little bits and pieces, you always feel like you're actually making a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's good to do that. And then like you can remind the kids of that too, because it's so easy for them, again, as teenagers, but as traumatized teenagers have had people telling them their whole lives that they're shit.
Yeah.
If you can say to them, like they might be like, oh, like I went to my youth justice worker today and it was a really shit meeting. Like, yeah, but you went. You got yourself there.
That's so good.
Like, that's dope. You got up, you did that. Like, you didn't have to, and you did. And like, just reminding them that like you're actually achieving things. You might not have had a good outcome at the end of the day, but like you got yourself there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. I think as well, like it must be getting a little bit easier in terms of, I mean, you've been doing it for 14 years, but if you think about how far understanding mental health has come to this point, like we are now at a point where we're looking at like within each diagnosis that you can give to someone, it's still so compartmentalized.
Absolutely.
Like it used to be just something where they would throw a word out at someone, which 9 times out of 10 would be wrong and it wasn't in the right category. But now we're even understanding that, you've got like PTSD, complex PTSD, like different versions of trauma, like all of those kinds of things. And like along that spectrum itself is so vastly different people instead of just, and now that we're starting to be able to get education around how to actually approach people that are exhibiting those particular signs of that particular type of trauma, it must be getting a little bit easier in terms of not feeling like you're floundering or that you're just kind of having to like sort them into this very wide bucket that doesn't really, I'm just throwing bits and pieces. I always fiddle and now I'm throwing. So I guess that's probably something that makes life a little bit easier for you, is that but it's still not, I mean, we're still nowhere near understanding it to the full, but like we said, even going back as far as the misdiagnosis of kids that when we were in high school, at least now we're getting to a point where it's getting a lot better and we're understanding that it's very intricate and very, nuanced throughout these ranges of conditions and trauma that we go through. Does that definitely help?
Yeah, it does. Like, the mental health system is still awful.
Of course.
It's absolutely awful. And young people in particular is really awful. Obviously, it's awful for everybody. It's absolutely terrible for everyone. But for young people, like, it's so easy. It's always been that thing where people are just like, oh, they're just teenagers. They're just going through it because they're teenagers. There's never any real acknowledgement of the fact that, no, they're actually, like, could be something going on here. That, like, just because they're teenagers doesn't mean that they haven't experienced shit, that they don't feel awful, that they don't genuinely want to kill themselves. Like, yes, they're teenagers, but these emotions are real. And and over the last few years, I guess, like you were saying, like, things have changed a lot. Some of the biggest things I think that I've noticed is only a couple of years ago, like literally 2-3 years ago, like borderline personality disorder. That's way more widely known now. People like know so much more about it.
Yep.
But like you couldn't get a diagnosis under 18 for borderline personality disorder.
Wow.
Yeah, like at all, they would not do it. And we had so many, especially young women that we worked with, that we were like, they have all BPD. The traits. Like that's what it is. And everyone would be like, it's anxiety, it's depression, whatever. And they would,
even then, why are you saying whatever to depression and anxiety?
Well, exactly. Like, that's a real thing.
Yeah,
and like, and like they would just give them like antidepressants, and then the antidepressants wouldn't work because that's not what they were experiencing.
And that's such the amount of stories that I know of people that are now diagnosed with BPD or even ADHD is another one. Like, we're seeing this thing now where they're picking up ADHD in females.
Yeah, hugely.
Which was never. You think about going to school. Did you ever hear of a girl with ADHD? That just wasn't a thing.
I never even heard about people with mental illness.
Well, that's
like in general.
Well, I do. The only thing I ever remember, autism definitely wasn't a thing when I was in high school.
Yeah.
You had like genuine intellectual disabilities, and I remember like you had your class of intellectual disabilities. And then you had ADHD boys that were just thrown, and that was the only diagnosis that they ever got was ADHD boys. But if I look at that now, until there was definitely ADHD girls.
Absolutely,
within that just were never even considered. And then there was definitely autism and things like that in the other boys, like, and Asperger's, like different things that I now understand the levels of. None of that was even understood at all.
No, not at all.
But then the problem that we've got now, which is still a big problem, is that misdiagnosis thing and the medication that comes with the misdiagnosis.
Huge.
Like we're always knocking pharmaceuticals, and I'm definitely not knocking them. But what I have a problem with is that quick fire, I'm certain that this is what it is. And the medication is so heavy. And for you guys that are trying to then so you've got to deal with not only the person who's dealt with the trauma and has gone through the things, now they're going through being misdiagnosed, so they're getting the wrong medication, and then that wrong medication comes with a list of side effects.
Absolutely.
And now when they finally admit that they were wrong, you've got to go through the weaning them off and then starting a new one. Oh, whoops, that one's not quite right. Or the dose was too high or too low or whatever again. Like, that must be incredibly challenging.
Yeah, and you got so many of these kids that, again, they're teenagers, so that like their parents, like that generation, really went through that stuff of like these things didn't exist as well. So they've got their parents who are like, oh, like that doesn't exist, or that's not what it is, or like, you don't go to a psychologist, just take the medication. You don't actually need to go to therapy. Like, and that's such a huge thing for us. It's so hard to get kids to go and talk about these things.
Yeah.
They'll talk to us, like they'll come and they'll talk to us, and you're like, all right, cool. It'd be really great if you like talk to someone who can help you with that. And they're like, no. And you're like, cool. And that is so much that generational stuff where you don't talk about your problems.
Yeah,
you need to take them in
I've even got, and I'm sorry if anyone's listening to this who's my friend who's like this, and you're probably going to hate me, but one thing that blows my mind even now, and when I've spoken to therapists, and they talk about the importance of you need to be going to therapy and on medication.
Yeah,
you shouldn't just be on medication. And I know plenty of people that are just on medication and aren't actually doing anything to actually understand why it is that they need it and whatever. And whether it's, I'm not saying to do that to get them off. Maybe they will need the medication forever.
And that's fine.
But you should be, like, it's crazy that it's not something where it's like, these are the two things you need to do.
Yeah, it should be complementary,
it
not
should be
like standalone.
Hey, okay, you've come to me with these problems, so here's what we're going to do. It is 100% that you're going to be taking these medication and 100% that you're going to be doing therapy. I personally believe it should be do therapy first. That's the first thing you're going to get prescribed. And then based on that experience, we're going to see where you are after a period of time.
Yeah.
But that's not everyone's experience. Like 9 times out of 10 people are just like, here's the diagnosis and here's the thing we give you to go with that.
Absolutely.
And then that creates its own massive, set of problems.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's something that slowly, it is getting better from what I hear, that it's less of that, like, here's what it is and here's the thing.
Yeah.
They're starting, but still we're so far behind the
absolutely.
bell curve with like, there's that many people that are out there and they're just like, yeah, I mean, I take these meds and it makes me feel better, but they're only one life significant, difficulty, struggle away from complete bedlam.
Yeah.
Because they're not doing the work to actually understand their triggers and understand their whatever. So yeah, when everything's going fine and they're on the medication, they're not feeling as bad as what they did before.
Yeah.
But all it takes is that situation to change and they're possibly worse than they've ever been.
Yeah.
And I just hope that, I guess, the message I'm trying to get out here is that you've got to do both. Like,
you've got to do the work.
It's not a taboo thing.
Yeah.
And it's now like, we had the guys from Next Step who they run like an Instagram page where they've got psychologists that are in their team that people can just message the Instagram page and speak directly to a psychologist. So it's as easy access as you could possibly get without paying, without
That's very cool.
having to feel like I'm going to a shrink or whatever the bad words are that they use. And you're getting genuine, real professional advice. That kind of stuff I love. I love seeing these kind of grassroots organizations to get these conversations to the forefront.
Especially the affordability, because the affordability is such an issue for people.
Yeah.
Like,
it's expensive.
Yeah. And you're talking about, like, I mean, obviously not all people that need to go to therapists. Everyone needs to go to therapy, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, but when you're talking about marginalized people who they need help and people want them to, like, get better, but they can't afford the help.
Yeah, well, that's right. They're not going to be the ones that have the money to then go and pay for it as well.
Yeah, you're looking at some places like $350 for your first visit and then $220 for every visit after that.
Yeah.
And if they're home,
I work full time and if I needed to go and see a therapist, even on a fortnightly basis, like $200, so that's $440 a month.
Yeah.
How does that fit into a normal? Like that's
rent.
What I pay that for my car loan pretty much now, and that's a fucking car loan, not just like. So people will prioritize that over that all the time.
Yeah,
and that's definitely a big issue as well. Is that it's all, and I gotta obviously admit, like, it's easy for me to sit there and say, oh yeah, well, you need to be doing that as well. But again, it's not accessible necessarily.
No, exactly.
And if you can get a prescription and that makes you feel better and you don't have to go and do the work. But I think it's something where, again, what we're starting to see now through the mental health plans and whatever, that should have been something that was already there a long time. If they were willing to hand out these things, which can sometimes significantly alter the course of someone's life. Like, they can never come off of those. Yeah. And it can have all of those other effects. And there was just no investment or no money being put into. How about we actually try and, like, help them deal with all of this?
Exactly.
That must be hard as well, again, for you working with kids where they're just like, well, they can't have a mental illness at that young. They're just being
they're just being teenagers.
Yeah,
they're just naughty or, like, whatever. And it's super annoying. And it does really annoy me because, like similarly to you, but I kind of think it should be done a little bit differently. Like, whereas you have therapy and you have the medication there to back you up to help you get through the hardness of therapy.
Yep.
And it's such a big thing. And again, I'm a big pharma, fucking hate it, is like the go-to is medication. Yeah. Whereas, like, not everyone's ready for therapy then and there. And I absolutely understand that.
That's completely.
100% understand that. So, like, if you need the medication to get you to that point, but the encouragement should be towards therapy. It shouldn't just be.
Just, fill in with drugs and hope.
And then, like, there's never, like, my experience with it is, like, none of these kids are ever really spoken to about therapy. It's always like they'll go to the doctor and they'll be like, oh yeah, you're depressed, take this. And they don't even talk to the kids about the fact that, like, not every antidepressant's the same. You're going to have side effects. This one might not be for you. So in, like, a month's time, if it's not working, come back and we'll change it. Like, they don't have those conversations.
No.
Yeah. So these kids are either going, oh, for fuck's sake, it's not working. And then they just stop trying, or they stay on the shit one forever, then it doesn't work.
Yeah.
They're not actually, like, these doctors aren't taking the time to have these conversations. And I'm sure it's not just kids, but obviously that's what I can talk about.
Of course.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
They're not giving that time to actually help.
How does it work in terms of, so you're dealing with someone who doesn't have a family system, and then you're the, I guess you're the kind of caregiver in some of these instances. Do you guys have any involvement in that process where you can try and be advocates for these kids to make sure that they are getting the right diagnosis and making sure they're seeing good doctors? Like, do you guys play a part in that?
Yeah, we take pretty much like a lead role in doing that. Obviously, some kids, they don't want you to do that side of things, and that's fine. Like, we're not their parents at the end of the day, but we are there to like make sure that they get the support that they need.
Yeah.
It can be really difficult. Like, we have previously and like often work really closely with like the mental health ward, like the children's mental health ward at Women's and Children's, which I can't remember. They just changed their name. It was Boylan Ward anyway. Worked really closely with them, and
is that a bit better that through there? Or is that shocking as well?
It's
okay.
fucking terrible.
No, I wouldn't think that would be any
Yeah,
better.
it is awful, and it's the only mental health ward for young people in South Australia. Like, that's it. And I think they've got 8 beds. I'm pretty sure.
That is not enough.
It's not enough. It's absolutely not enough. So like,
and even if you're in there, they got no idea how to handle it. So it's like, not only is it ill-equipped, it's also not equipped. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not the number of beds. More beds wouldn't make the
quality of care better. Yeah, exactly. And like, to there's a degree. Obviously, like, I appreciate them. They've helped us. Like, they've helped our kids sometimes. Like, some of the kids have had really great outcomes, but not many of them.
Yeah.
And there are some really cool new programs that are coming out. Like, there's the urgent mental health care facility in the city now. I don't know if you know about that, but that's really cool. And like, you can just drop in, and like, you don't even have to talk to anyone. You can just sit there. You can take your pet with you. You can take a friend with you. You can talk to a doctor. You can talk to a nurse. You can talk to a psychologist. Like, that's such a cool service. It's so chill. There's no pressure. Yeah. It's not for acute mental health. It's for, like, when you're just kind of not really sure.
Overwhelmed.
You're overwhelmed. You're feeling really shit. You're not really sure what to do. So you can go there and have that support.
Which again is coming back to that thing where like what's happening at the moment, not a government thing, but from a human perspective, is we're bridging those gaps between a normal person and a lunatic. We used to think that there was nothing in between, or you used to treat people like there was nothing in between. You were either completely okay or you were fucked.
Absolutely,
and I'm not saying that I'm just saying that was the treatment.
Yeah.
Whereas now we understand that everyone exists on the spectrum. First of all, no one is actually okay.
No,
for starters.
no.
And that there are so many levels between those 2 points, even though this one isn't actually what I said it was. And that but before it was like, if you were going through something, the only thing you thought was here was you all the way over there. You didn't think, I just need some help to work through this, or I've realized that, the shit that went on in my childhood is really starting to affect the way that I am as a parent or whatever. Like, there's so many of just those little struggles that no one ever gets any help for or whatever, because they think, I don't want to consider myself in that like thing because of the way it was made taboo. Yeah. But it's starting to get a lot better now, where people are able to actually go, you know what, I'm not okay, and I don't know what it is, and I'm going to work through it.
And there's a lot of classism around that as well, I think.
Yeah.
Like, people that were like well off, like, were the normal ones, and like no one thought that those people could have a bad mental health time.
Yeah.
And then those people that would look down on people who did experience trauma and stuff, and they're like, like, they're the lunatics. And there was never that like kind of middle ground of like, the people who have been traumatized can actually come out of that and be okay. Yeah. Okay. And those people that are okay can actually have a mental breakdown as well. Yeah. Like you said, it's absolutely like, it can go both ways. It's not this and this. It's like,
it's
like,
it's not black and white. It's grey.
Well, especially you think of how many people like the ones that had like the had everything they could have ever wanted except their parents being around.
Yeah.
Right. And they're the ones that quite often struggle, a lot. Or I know a lot of people that have, had that perfect upbringing, what they would think is perfect.
Yep.
But yet they never had the support, the love, the attention or whatever. And then they've ended up lashing out and becoming really, and then, then you've obviously got the opposite end of the spectrum where they had like grew up with nothing, but then they had the abusive parents or whatever. And it's like somewhere in the middle of that is like parents that were barely struggling and their family kind of communicated and they went through the struggle together, and they wouldn't be seen as but they're the ones that are quite often helping both sides.
Yeah,
of those, you know
absolutely.
What I mean?
Yeah.
You're right in that it's the way we looked at it back then, at least, even going back to the gay stuff and everything now, as humans, not a government thing at all, they're still useless, but as human beings, it is at least humbling and exciting that we are understanding shit way better than what we ever had before. And I think the whole, like you said, we've all got some level of anxiety or have experienced some level of depression or whatever in our life. And I think that as a human race, where we're all kind of like hey, like we're all very different and your experience is in no way mine, but I can definitely understand what you're going through to some degree. And we talk about this all the time, but it's like the biggest thing that, especially like anxiety, and that does is makes you feel so isolated, and that you're the only one that can possibly understand what you're going through. But that's not true.
Yeah,
and I guess that would be a huge thing for you guys in the system as well, is like trying to get them to understand that. I guess that's probably a good question. How does it go with the kids, with other kids? Is that a really difficult thing? Do you often find that they are able to find camaraderie in their situations, or are they again have that very much like, no, you can't understand what my thing is? How does that go?
It's very interesting. Like the dynamics of the kids is always super interesting, because like we have 8 kids, but it's not like we get 8 walk in and 8 walk out at the same time.
Of course, yeah. It's not
always
the Big Brother house.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so, you know, one kid will move out and another kid will move in, and like it's always changing. So it's very dependent on the kids, but generally it's really interesting when you get a new kid or a couple of new kids. It maybe will take him a little while to come around to each other, but you'll start hearing them having those conversations where they are comparing their stories, and that's pretty normal. Like, it's very rare that we have a kid that doesn't want to tell their story.
Yeah.
But you'll hear them like comparing their story and like, oh, like your mum did this. Oh, my mum did that too. Or like, you know, I thought I was the only one whose mum was like that, or dad was like that, or like childhood was like that. And it's really cool when you hear them do that stuff, because it's like, yeah, it's fucked up, and like people don't want to hear those stories, but like for those kids, that's literally their lives.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah. So hearing them like find someone else that they're like, yeah, right, like I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. And they do find camaraderie in that, which is so funny, like, because these kids are like, when I tell you they are so different, like they are so different.
Of course, yeah.
Like, you know, we've worked with kids that, again, that classism comes into it. People think that it's only like those traumatized kids. Like, I've worked with so many kids that go to private schools that have had like really perfect lives. And then like maybe they've gotten an A instead of an A+, and their parents have been like, go.
Wow.
And they've kicked them out. Like,
that's fucked.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I've literally worked with kids from like every walk of life.
Yeah.
And like, so to hear them like, you know, you take a kid that 2 different kids like walking down Rundle Mall that you would think would never speak to each other, in our house, they're best friends. Like it's so cool that happens, because like in no other part of the world would they probably have spoken.
Yeah.
It's sad because yes, they're there and they shouldn't have to be there for that to happen, but it is cool that they can find that in each other. And then obviously like on the other side of that, sometimes it's really bad where like we might get a kid that self-harms, and like quite often our kids do, and we'll get a kid that self-harms, and that you might have a kid who hasn't self-harmed in 6 months, and then the other kid does, and then they go fuck, and it brings up things for them. So then they self-harm, and then, you know, they've gone from being like, oh, I'm like clean from self-harm from 6 months, to now like, fuck, I've self-harmed and I don't know why. And it's because someone else has. And, or, you know, and like literally we get kids who, I hate to say, like they do it for attention, because obviously they do it for a reason, but like they see someone do it, they see that they get that attention, they want that attention, so that's the only way they know how to get it, so that's what they'll do. So in like a bad way as well, they'll get camaraderie out of it, because they'll be like, you self-harm, I'm going to self-harm. And
right.
What's like the whole, what do they say about when you like, well, the reason they don't talk about like suicides and stuff on the news, because there's the term for it, what's it called, where like I can't remember, we've talked about it on the pod before, but it's like that whole thing of like, you know, it creates that ripple effect of like,
kind of like subtle encouragement in a certain, I guess.
Yeah, like that thing where it's like they're now seeing that thing, so it makes that, it triggers that thing in them. Yeah, and that would be the hard. So you've got, you know, both sides where it could be really beneficial for them.
Yeah,
and especially I guess, you know, say if you've got a group that have been in there for a while and you know they've not moved on, then you've got that new person coming into what is now this crazy ecosystem of all of these people, and then that can probably throw the balance out massively, depending on, you know, how they come in, whether they're very wild or timid or whatever it may be. It must be incredibly tough, but it's amazing and profound work that you're doing. So I'm glad that you've been able to find something that means the world to you and is really special. But let's move into some a bit more fun stuff. Obviously, we talked about what you do to help your mental health, and we couldn't give the complete picture of Abbie if we didn't talk about the roller derby queen of South Australia. So tell us about your roller derby journey. How long ago did that start?
4 years ago.
Oh my God. Yes. Wow. So, and you love it.
I love it.
Fucking froth it unbelievably.
Yeah. That is probably like the biggest thing outside of work that I do for my mental health is go out there and skate. And yeah, I love it. It's so good.
You want to talk about camaraderie? Like it is
Yeah.
such a cool. I mean, you've made lifelong friends and everything out of this, and you've only done it for a few years. And it seems like, as I said, I've got a couple of other friends that have been involved in it over many years as well. I mean, I think the friend that you know that I'm referring to, Mel, that was on the podcast as well. Yeah. We didn't talk about it with her because we were talking about the craziness of her falling from the bloody sky. But I think she was doing it, I remember, back in like 2010 or something, around the time that we met, maybe
for a long time.
So yeah, like it's exploded. Like it's bigger, way bigger now than I remember it being back then. How'd you get into it? What was the? Did you ever skate, by the way? Like before then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I roller skated when I was a kid. Like I loved skating when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I had roller skates.
Did you go to Skate FX back in the day?
Yeah, of course.
Oh my god, Skate FX
It was so good.
Yeah.
Kids parties at Skate FX was like the pinnacle.
The best. Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
I loved it. So I always skated when I was a kid. I roller skated. I roller bladed because I guess like the 90s was a bit more blade heavy.
Yeah, that's right. No one was on those 4 wheels.
Yeah.
Get off your 4 wheels.
They had 4 wheels, didn't they?
But in a straight line.
Yeah, in a straight line.
Yeah.
Oh shit! I thought it was 3. I thought it was 3 for
There
skates.
were some that have 3. I think the speed skating ones have 3.
Right.
I think,
Well,
yeah.
there you go. I was clearly a speed skater.
Yeah.
You're just too cool.
I never speed skated a damn
He
thing.
took a wheel out to
Anything I did on wheels was never with speed.
And I think like so I always skated. I always loved it, but like I never liked sport. I always hated sport.
Yeah.
And then like so 2010 was kind of the year that roller derby hit South Australia. That's like when like Murder City, which is who I play for, that's when they started. I think pretty much all the leagues started in like 2010. That is literally when it hit. It's like when Whippet came out and like Australia kind of discovered roller derby.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd never heard of it, and it was very American centric, I guess, at that time. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Like that's super, super cool. And one of my friend's sisters played, so we used to go watch her every now and then. And I was like, that's super cool. But like, never thought it was something I could do because like, I hated sport. I never, and I like, I guess like that comes back to that displacement stuff too. Like I had never felt like I had a space in sport either. Like I never felt like I would be comfortable in there. And like you're bringing gayness back into it, which is like wild to think about now that I know what I know. But like thinking that, especially like being in a woman's sport and being gay, is like everyone would always assume that you were hitting on them. Because it was like that as a teenager. Like if I had like girls' nights, everyone would be like, oh, she's going to hit on me. So like I always kind of had that in the back of my head of like, if I join a girl's sport, they're just going to think that I want to bang them, which is like, I'm just fucking there to do a sport.
Yeah.
So I was like, always was like super, like loved it. It was really cool, but never got super, super into it. And then like, I don't know, I guess like 6-7 years ago, me and a girl that I knew, like she really wanted to play. And we both went to a info night, and I was like, fuck yeah, like this is what I want to do. Like this is so cool. The vibe was really cool. They had the info night at Grace Emily, which is a cool venue. And it was just really cool. Everyone, like the way they talked about it and the community was really awesome. And I was like, heck yeah, like this seems really cool. At the time I was working shift work at the shelter in the city.
Yep.
And the time commitment was huge. So I was like, I can't do that because I was literally working like 80-hour weeks. Like I was working so much at that shelter and, you know, loving that as much as I did. Like I didn't want to work less to do something that I wasn't sure about.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was always like, so it had always been in the back of my head since then. And then, I guess like 4 years ago, one of my friends joined. It was like my best friend's girlfriend at the time joined Derby, and she loved it. And she like talked so highly of it. And I went to watch her play. In her very first like her family and friends bout. So it was like only allowed to invite family and friends. It's not public. And I went to watch her and I was like, and I fucking like there was just that thing in me that it was like, I still really want to do this. It looks so good. And then she was like, you should do it. And then like we went out skating together a few times. Like I had skates. And so we went skating a few times and she was like, you know, she would show me stuff. And then she was like, oh, like you pick it up really quickly. And then she was like, you should join. And then like, she had a bout and I went to the bout and went to the after party and everyone there was just like, oh, like, why don't you join? Like, you should join. Like, you'd love it. And then like, they were all just so welcoming and so lovely. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do it. Like, I've been saying I want to do this for so long. Like, why am I putting it off? I wasn't working in shelter at the time. So like, I was working 9 to 5. So I was like, time commitment.
The perfect time.
Yeah. So like the time was literally perfect. So I was like, I'm going to do it. And I joined and like, literally, yeah, it was so welcoming. Like, literally from like the second I walked in the door, like everyone was so welcoming. It was like not any like the bad things that I had in the back of my head, like literally just like were gone. Like I forgot that I even thought them. Like everyone was just so cool.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was so good and super inclusive community. And then, you know, having gone to a few rollies trainings, like which is like fresh, like when you're first starting, like you very quickly kind of get like absorbed into like the whole thing. And then going out to see other leagues bouts as well, and then realizing like, you know, because there's 5 leagues in South Australia.
Okay.
And like they're all like everybody knows everybody, and like they're all really close knit, and like, you know, people, they go to each other's bouts, or like people would start off in like Mel did, like she's been in quite a few leagues. Like she started with Motor City, she went to Light City, now she's at ADRD. Like like people move around, but they stay. Like there's no like resentment when someone leaves. It's like they still stay friends, and you're still part of the community. And
that's
like
good.
and it's not like it's a competitive sport, but there's not like this competition where they're like, oh, I'm gonna fucking smash you. Or,
you don't have like arch enemies.
Yeah, like everyone, like you go out and you play, but like, you know, when we're on the track, like you hit somebody and then you'll be like, sorry, and like keep skating, you know, and like that's really cool because like there's no malice, like there's no malintent involved, and like you do hurt somebody.
It's like a mosh pit thing where like,
yes,
you
mosh etiquette.
That's what I really attributed to when I watched it. I was like, it's like watching a mosh pit on skates, really, where like everybody is like super, even though there's like competitive, and I guess in the same thing, you know, you're swinging your arms and that you're like have the potential to do damage, but you're still like, oh my God, I'm sorry.
You'll make sure that everybody's okay at the end of the day. Yeah, and that just like was just super cool, like just such a cool thing to experience and be a part of. And I think like for me, I really like the fact that like you can literally just go and like and show up and skate and leave, or you can literally like you can be a part of everything. Like you can be on committees, like they're member run, so like the members need to have a part in like making sure that the bouts happen and making sure that fundraising happens and things like that. So there's always something to do. So for people who might feel really isolated or might want a hobby that, or like a sport that is also a hobby, or, you know, like there's literally so much you can do. And it's not just like, if you can't skate or you don't want to skate, there's still things that you can do. You can still be a part of it.
Of a community. Well, when I went, obviously they had like people selling like stuff, like they had like cake stands and all these kinds of things. And, you know, the kids are in the back, like, and the other part of like this, the Campbelltown, is it Campbelltown Sports Centre?
Yeah, the Arc.
Yeah. And the kids are playing basketball in the back, and, you know, while the roller bout is happening, and it's just like, it was just such a cool like community thing. And I mean, that's the same for a lot of team sports, that they have that kind of thing. But I definitely got an incredible vibe out of being there at that. So if someone's listening and they're like, oh my God, like I love skating but I have no idea where to start, can you point them in the right direction of what they would do if they're like, hey, I want to find out more? Who would they speak to? What do they find on Facebook? Like, what is the best way?
I mean, obviously, I'm going to plug Motor City,
of course,
over anybody
So
else.
is it your team?
Yeah,
that you
Motor
play
City,
for?
Yeah.
So you play against other like teams in Motor City, or is Motor City play against other?
So Motor City is like the league, and
That's
then
the
like
league, okay.
and then we've got 2 teams within our league. So we've got the
Right.
Death Leopards and the Iron Mayhems. Iron Mayhems is the better team, clearly.
Yeah.
So we will play each other.
Okay.
And then like every now and again we will play like mostly Rockabella's roller derby. They're really cool. Not saying the other leagues aren't, but like they're the ones that we would play with the most. So sometimes like we'll play against them. Like we had a scrim against them last night, which was really cool. Or they'll come out and like if we're short for players and stuff, like they fill in for us, which is another really cool thing. Like we don't have to give up playing because like we're low on numbers. Like they will help us out and like give us other players and things like that.
So you play against the same team every week, basically?
No, we
Not
don't play
quite.
it weekly. So we play like our season. Ours in particular, like Motor Cities, is longer than everyone else's just because our venue's a bit tricky with bookings and stuff.
Right, okay.
But it's generally monthly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
because it is such a big thing to organize. Like it's, it's a huge thing to organize.
Which
so,
is cool from a commitment perspective, though.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously you train every week, though, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
But if someone like obviously was more of a veteran of it or whatever, then they can go, I can still do this monthly, like without having to like stress so much that it's like every week and I work every second weekend or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like that's kind of cool that it's not as consistently required as a lot of other sports are.
Yeah, and we have training opportunities. Like, so we have like Mondays are for our like fresh skaters, so only our fresh skaters can skate then.
Yeah.
And we do off skates trainings as well, so people can come and learn about rules and like officials. I said like there's jobs for people that don't skate as well.
Yeah.
And we literally can't like bout if we don't have officials. So we have trainings just for officials. Wednesdays is for our like bouting skaters, which we like have officials will come and like do stuff then as well. So they're learning, our referees will skate. And then Sundays we have trainings where like everyone can come. So like no matter what skill level you're at. So there's like,
that's amazing.
Yeah. So there's plenty of opportunities for people. So like if, like you're saying, like if a Monday doesn't work for you, if you can't rock up on a Monday, you can come to a Sunday.
Yeah.
Like, so we try to make it accessible, and we've like throughout the time have like changed the times, changed the days to try and find stuff that like works for people. And that's kind of what we found is consistently like the best kind of days and times for people. And considering like, you know, we consider ourselves a family friendly league. So we try to consider the fact that people have families and personal lives and things like that. Like,
of course.
There is like you do have to make attendance, but it doesn't mean that you can't come to trainings and still like do all those other things. Like making attendance is about safety. Like if you don't skate at all for 3 months, you're not just going to come and play a game because you don't know if you're safe. So it's not about like penalizing people. It's literally about like you just need to be safe.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is a pretty crazy like sport.
Like you're on wheels. Like no matter, like I always say, like
and going fast too. Like you're not just like
and you're hitting
crawling
people
around. Like, you're literally on wheels, going fast and crashing like, in these massive like huddles. So if people are, and you know, plug Motor City, that's fine. How would they get in contact and find out more?
So we do like Motor City does. We call it a rolling intake. So traditionally, roller derby used to be, and a couple of leagues still do it. Whereas like you'd only have one intake a year. You'd come and you'd train for like 6 weeks. You have a test. If you pass the test, you go on to the next part. If you don't pass, then you try again next year. So we now have a thing. So the first Monday of every month, we have an intake. So people can come out on a Monday night and give it a go, whether it's like on skates or off skates. We do both on that Monday so that people can get a feel for everything. We have a specific like tailored training on those Mondays to get people to like walk through and experience a little bit of everything so they can see what they do and don't like. Also knowing that like it's not exactly the cheapest sport, like gear is expensive.
Yeah, of course.
So we do try to have like a little bit of gear that people can borrow if they don't want to like front the cost straight away. Also like Skate Society and High Marsh do hire gear, so you can hire packs. So you can try them out, which is really cool. And we're looking at like hopefully doing some of that ourselves as well, so we can kind of have some hire gear. We've got literally a bucket of just like people's old gear that we're like, we'll find something that fits you. Like we'll go through it.
Yeah, that's so good.
So we try to make it as like accessible for people as possible.
But that's a lot of what scares people from getting into it, is that they're worried about committing to it, they're not enjoying it or committing to it, like having these ways that they can come out and get a taste for it and just see if it's something, or realize actually I'm not going to skate, but I just want to be what else can I possibly do?
Exactly.
Like, can I help out with this kind of stuff?
And we're awesome. Huge on that because we're like, we literally cannot skate. Like we all love skating and that's what we want to do, but like we can't do that without the people that don't skate. Like we need people that like keep track of score, people that tell us when we're doing illegal things. Like we need those people. So like officials are like super important for us. So like we always are trying to encourage, and we try to encourage our skaters as well to learn those things so that like if you don't make attendance that time, you can still be a part of it on the day. Like you don't have to sit there and be like, oh, I missed out. Like you can come and you can official, you can ref, you can do something, you can work the bake sale. Like everyone's included. And so they just messaged the Facebook like, page, Motor City Roller Derby Facebook. And I'm the person that responds to the messages. So.
Oh my God! Wow, there you go. So you're going to be speaking directly to Abbie.
That's right.
Maybe don't ask her any questions about everything else you've heard on the podcast in that chat, but I'm sure if you can find her in other ways, and you can
pretend
have that
you didn't hear the rest of it.
Let's get into we've smashed out an hour and a half like without even blinking. So, but we cannot have a guest on without getting through the questions. So do you want to hit her with number one, my good man?
What is number one again?
You know what number one is. What is your...
I need some water for this.
What's number one again?
Is your favourite?
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. This is a tough one.
It is a tough one.
This is a toughie. What's your favourite song of all time?
Oh, fuck. Imagine by John Lennon.
Oh,
we haven't had any.
Yeah, we haven't had anything like
Oh
that.
my God.
No, we always get such good range
Yeah,
on
we
this
do.
question.
Yeah.
And you answered that real quickly. Too.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever had.
Yeah,
Hit us with the fuck.
She's
Like it was
been
the
asked
hardest
before.
question. Yeah.
Do you have a top 3 then?
Yeah, is there a couple of
Oh, no,
others?
that's even harder.
You got to give us like a Manson song or something.
I was
you
going to
know
say,
how-
yeah, no, definitely. It's hard because, like, imagine such a meaningful song, then go to like
then
Marilyn
you're like,
Manson song.
Marilyn Manson,
Yeah.
But that's what I love is like the everyone's got that range of like,
Yeah.
you know, where it's like, if you just heard the number one, you wouldn't understand that there's a lot of complexity to the rest of that playlist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Bother by Stone Sour.
Oh,
Stone Sour.
yeah.
That
Definitely
always,
haven't had
like-
Stone Sour, but I love me a bit of
I
Stone
think
Sour.
someone
Yeah.
said Slipknot before. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you got the core.
Yeah,
The
that's like
Corey
one song that
crossover.
like I wouldn't listen to on repeat, but like every time it comes on, I'm like,
You're like, oh
yes.
yeah, fuck yeah, that's a vibe. All right, we'll stop you at 2.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Speaking of 2, though, what's question number 2?
All right, question number 2. I don't remember this one.
Okay,
I remember
good.
this one. Who's your favorite comedian or comedic actor?
Justin.
Yeah.
No, we say that you can't
Didn't
have
even
this
know.
guy.
You can say that. You've been to so many of my shows.
No,
One of my
true.
biggest fans of all
I
time. So
am.
thank you. Aside from me, because it
Okay.
seems like I paid you off.
It definitely does seem like that.
Someone
it was
else.
so quick. It was just,
Yeah, I know.
It was like comedy is
Like
Justin.
slipping the $50 note under the table. Anyone else?
Okay. Or
your big favourite, Ginge?
Okay,
The comedian or comedic actor?
Yeah.
comedic actor. That's a tricky one. There's literally someone like I'm picturing her face and I can't think of her name, so that's how much of my
Yeah,
favorite she
yeah, wow,
is.
yeah.
Like-
Are you more of a true crime person or?
yes,
Yeah.
I love true crime.
true,
Love
yeah,
true crime. Oh my god, I can't believe I can't remember her name. She's blonde. She did like the all female Ghostbusters cast.
Oh, not Melissa McCarthy.
No. Nah, they're like kind of like nerdier one.
Oh,
I can't remember her name.
she can't be that much of your favorite.
I know,
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
See, so it's
All right,
just
so
Justin.
the thin. There you go. We'll take the Justin then.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah. We will this time.
She remembered
Thank
my
you.
name.
Yes.
All right, question number 3. Have you ever meditated before?
Have I what?
Ever meditated?
Oh,
Meditate.
no
yeah.
idea what I thought you said.
Yeah, wow. Not the other M starting with ending with A.
I was like,
Okay, we're not that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Do you want me to elaborate on that?
Yeah, yeah. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
I guess,
why
yeah.
not?
Tell us your experience with it.
I don't know if you recall one of my exes that was very much into meditation and stuff like that.
Yes,
Yeah. So we had like
I mean, there's so many of those exes. It's hard to
It's
remember
true,
them
no.
all, but,
we had like a full Zen room in our house that had
That's
like
cool, though.
crystals and like heaps of stuff like that. Yeah, I think it's cool. I think people should do it. I don't make time to do it. I
Yeah.
like always think I need to, and then I don't make time to do
Yeah.
it. But she like kind of taught me because I always was like, you know, I had this picture of like you have to sit in like a quiet room and be like,
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas like she told me like you can literally meditate anywhere. Like it doesn't matter
Yep.
how noisy or whatever is going on, and that like has always resonated with me with when I am stressed and I can just sit there and be like,
Yeah.
you know, like that is meditating. Like
Yep.
you're,
Yeah.
clearing your mind is meditating. So
Yeah. Yeah, the breathing sort of thing that you can literally do that. And it's
Yeah.
probably even more important to be able to do it in a time that's chaotic.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, oh, I'm going to go home and sit in my Zen room to meditate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like if you're sitting on the train after a bad day, that's your time
Yeah.
to like put headphones in and like meditate.
Yeah, because I always had the
Um,
idea of it was like, yeah, you had to like be wearing like
Sitting
loose
on,
fitting
yeah.
clothing. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
and like so
yeah.
quiet and like my brain does not switch off. Like it's always like
Yeah.
and like so for me, I was always like, I can't switch that off. So how am I going to meditate? And she was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
if that's still going, like it can still be going, and that's fine. You
Just
can
don't
still
pay
meditate.
attention to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like,
Yeah.
that's a thing that I can do.
Yeah,
Interesting.
that's cool.
like, yeah.
Fuck yeah,
Yeah.
Question number 4. Do you remember what question number 4 is?
I do.
Yeah.
I just didn't. For some reason, I just didn't remember
Do
the
you
first
remember the
one.
first one? Which
I was
is
just
like the one we normally
what we
always
normally
remember.
for off. We're like,
Yeah, we normally get that one out and then have no idea what we're doing. But
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Ooh, that's a hard one. And it's very hard. I mean, my dad telling me I can speak to homeless people has obviously like changed the course of my life a little bit.
If you didn't know the story before, you just heard like that. If we just put a clip of that, what's the best people's advice? My dad's saying I can talk to homeless people, and you knew nothing else of the rest of this episode. Amazing.
Yeah,
What a
you'd be like,
soundbite that's going to be when I when I cut it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely use that. I feel like the other thing, I don't know if it counts as advice or it's more just like a gimmicky kind of phrase, but you're the captain of your own canoe.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah, so I've always like really liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember like I was told that in like a work way of kind of like when I was young and first starting out in youth work, being like, oh, like, can I do this? Can I do that? And like my manager at the time and who is still my manager, was my manager again, literally like saying to me, you're the captain of your own canoe, being like, you can make your own mistakes and you're going to learn from them.
Yeah.
And he like, and letting me do that, being like, you are going to fuck up and that's totally okay because you are the captain of your own canoe. You're making those decisions. And that's always been like, and I say that to the kids now, like if they're like, oh, can I do this? I'm like, you're the captain of your own canoe.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That's so good. That's
cool.
awesome.
Yeah.
And it is such an important, like that lesson intrinsically of like, you are going to fuck up and that's okay. And we're going to work through that. That is something that has just not been used enough holistically. Do you know what I mean? Like and it's so important. If people actually felt like it was okay to fail and make mistakes and learn from them, we would have a much different
absolutely, because
society.
fucking up is human.
Sure.
We all fuck up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Question number 5, I guess, or 4 or whatever we're up to now. 4. What is one conspiracy theory that you absolutely believe in?
Oh, that we didn't land on the moon.
That's such a common one. I like that we do get that one.
So what exactly about it do you think is not legit?
Yeah, what is it for you that just goes, yeah, no way?
I don't necessarily think that we haven't since, but I don't think the first moon landing was true. I don't actually have an opinion on it from that point on. Like I just don't care.
Is it like the flag blowing in the wind or the bag on the back of the
I think it was
Jeep that was flapping in the wind?
Yeah.
I think for me, it was really like the fact that there were so many attempts made that kept failing. All this money was getting pumped into it. And obviously at that time as well was like so different. Like money was so different. And all this money was getting put into it. And obviously people were getting to that point where they were like, for fuck's sake, like you got to keep putting this money into it. You need to make it happen. So for me, I was like, how easy would it have been for them to just be like, we need to make the people think that we can do this.
Yeah.
So let's just build a fucking set and let's do it. And then people are going to like trust us a little bit more.
And it was the whole space race thing as well. It was about winning the race.
Yeah,
so it was
exactly.
also about, like we want to be the first people there. So if we can't actually physically get there, let's just get old Stanley Kubrick in here.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Meanwhile,
make
like these
people
people have
think
like
that
fried up in the rockets on the way.
Yeah. That's a good one. All right. Well, the final question, which is always hard for the vegans, but you have to imagine that.
No, what's his new one? Give her the new one.
The new one.
Give her the new one.
But that's
a new one.
Give her the new one.
No,
kind of want both now.
That's a.
She's a vegan, right? So,
but that one's
they're
also
very fitting.
But that one's not vegan friendly either. They're
more
both
vegan.
No, they're both vicious.
They're both fighting.
Yeah. But that one is for returning guests, right? So that's if you've come on the pod and you're coming back again. We're just having our own internal debate. So forgetting that you're vegan for a second, right? This is a hypothetical scenario in which these animals are trying to kill you and you've got no choice but to choose between, would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
You know how many times I have watched this and seen you guys do this, and it didn't occur to me that you were going to ask me this question, even though I've seen you do it to so many people.
It's the final guest of every question of every podcast. So
Damn it. And I did not
you had
take it into
time to
consideration.
form an opinion.
Hey.
You know why though? Because like the biggest thing for me was like I knew you were going to ask me about Old Mate 2.0. I was like, he's going to bring it up. So I didn't think about the horse-sized duck.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is it? A horse-sized duck?
Yep. So a big fuck off duck or 100 little horses.
I think the little horses.
Yeah.
I feel like I could like kick them.
Yes.
Everyone reckons they could just kick
Another
him,
one for Team Horse. I love it.
Because I think like a duck's bill, like a normal sized duck's bill is quite hard. Like have you been picked by a duck?
Yeah, but it's a duck.
Yeah, but if it's huge,
but that bill is like.
You think about how big its bill's gonna be. And I'm thinking of like a
frail. Horses aren't frail. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm thinking of like a Clydesdale. Those things are huge.
yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah, it's a big, and that
But
means
ducks
the
are still,
bill is
even though,
like,
they're aggressive, and and their beak may be hard, right? But I don't know. I just don't think that they're apex predators. Whereas horses,
they're not apex predators either. Like you literally,
they'll fuck you up.
Oh yeah, they absolutely will.
You know what I mean?
But I think so will a duck. I think a duck that's.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, imagine the mutation therapy.
You know, like they don't make you genuinely scared. Whereas if a horse was trampling at you, you'd be genuinely scared. You know what I mean?
I guess, but I mean, look at the Hulk when he's not the Hulk. He's like normal. But we're talking about a Hulk duck right now. Right? We're talking about Eric banner of ducks.
Yeah,
Think about the wingspan.
Yeah, the
Like,
wingspan. He could generate gusts. Like, imagine that's a Pidgey.
It's a Pidgey.
yeah.
That's a
And it
generating
can
some
fly, right? Like
serious
ducks,
gust.
normal sized ducks can fly. So surely a horse sized duck can fly.
Thank you.
Maybe.
And again, I didn't slip any money for this answer.
Yeah, of course not. All these answers
She's
are very
answered
sus.
me. Yeah, she's
Very,
answered
very sus.
Justin for the comedy, and she's also agreed with me about the horse-sized duck. So give me your BSB and account details afterwards. I'll flick you the money I owe you. But look, honestly, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I'm glad we got to end on a pretty fun note because obviously it was a pretty heavy chat, but that's exactly what we wanted to have. So
I
I
want to have a bit
appreciate
of depth,
you.
Like.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
it's that
I didn't know
yin and
Justin
yang,
had
baby, you
depth,
know?
so it's nice.
And look, and I can't believe I didn't ask you earlier. I don't know why I was just like, oh, she's not going to want to come on the pod. And then I was just like, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to ask her. And you're like, and I'm like, oh, well, do you want to come on the pod? And I'm like, would you ever come on the pod? And you're like, yeah, as soon as you ask me. I'm like, well, fuck's sake.
And that was like less than a week ago, and here I am.
Yeah, I know. We made it happen. But thank you so much. Thank you not
Thank
only
you.
For coming on, but obviously the awesome work that you're doing as well. You know,
Thanks.
I don't think it's something that I could possibly do. And I know a lot of people, as you said, that can't. But it takes a special kind of person. Obviously, we've got a lot of friends and mutual friends or whatever that are in the industry.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I know how tough it is for every one of them to be able to do that. And, you know, without that work, who knows how much worse in the fucked system that these
Absolutely.
kids would be. So, I guess never stop that, and hopefully you do get to do it for the rest of your life, like
Hopefully.
you clearly want to do,
Yes.
and hit up Murder City and get down
Yes,
and play
please
some
do.
roller derby
Please.
and annoy Abbie even more for me, and yeah,
We're all good.
thanks
you
so
very
much.
much.
for
Thank
coming
you,
on.
guys.
Love you.
Love you.
Bye.